All right, welcome back. Now it's time to start adding to our list. So adding to our list involves a couple of things. The first thing, we're going to get the customer's last name. So this is you're going to read in from the keyboard the last name, and it's going to go into the list. Now this count right here, we take our parameter, which is a pointer, and we dereference it to be value at count. And actually, if I want it to be more accurate, I should change this to count pointer, because this is count pointer. So I'm going to dereference the count. I'm going to go to the value at count pointer. So I'm going to go to my list, and that when it's at 0, this is index 0. And then I'm going to put the last name there. So when the user enters it, there's no ampersand here because last name is a character array. So I'm going to scan into the list at index 0 to the last name. So let's try it and see if it works. Oh, looks like I have an error here. Oh, because, I renamed this to count pointer. There's still going to be 0 items. I'm just making sure I can read in. When I hit A, I can enter the last name, and it works. Okay, so now we need to add the transaction. That involves a couple of things. So it involves adding the transaction, and it also involves setting the price. And calculating the total. All right, so the first thing we want to do, let's do the calculate the total. Nope, we're going to do, all right, let's go through this. All right, so when you add, you want to let the user know what are the gas items and gas types. And luckily, I already have that because I already did program 4 probably has it, I hope. Yes, it does. All right. So since I already did it in another program, I can just print this out. All right, so here are the gas options. I'm keeping it the same as it's been the whole semester. So you're going to display these. This is adding a transaction. We're going to get to in a minute. The reason that we need this valid number is that we need to decide and make sure that the user will enter a valid number. If they don't enter a number, because they're not going to have to enter the gas type, we're going to use the gas type number that they enter in order to set the other fields. So we're going to display these, and then we're going to use scanf to get the item number from the user. Now, if you remember back here, when we get the last name from the user, we take our list, we go to the location within our list. So when it starts out at 0, but then after we put 1 in there, our next empty location will be 1. And we go to the last name field. There is no ampersand here because a character array with %s does not take a ampersand. This is an item number. We're going to be going to this item number, so we do need to include the ampersand. And the list that was passed into this function, this same list, this is an array, so if I modify it within the function, it's going to get modified. This is going to be passed from the main function into the process selection function, and then when we call the add transaction function, which we're not really ready to do that yet, but I just wanted to show you, when we call the add transaction function, we're going to pass the list, and we're going to pass the count pointer. Now I don't need to put an ampersand here because the count pointer already is an address, and here it's an address, and in the add transaction function, it is also an address. All right, so we're going to come back to this function call. I just was showing you that, the flow. All right, so let's finish adding our transaction. All right, so we'd say, here are your choices, and we ask them to enter their choice. So they're going to enter a number. Now let's just pretend that they entered a 1 through 5. Then we're going to ask them to enter the number of gallons. So keep in mind that the number of gallons is going to be also an integer. So please enter the number of gallons. So we're not going to take that into the item number. We're going to take that into the num gallons. So we have we're going to do the scenario that they did everything right first. So we get that we say, we got their last name already. And this is what makes structs very cool and arrays of structs even cooler, because you're passing it around your function into you're passing around your program into your different functions, and you're modifying it, and it's getting updated all into the same list. So we before we call this function, if you remember, we have our add transaction, we ask for the last name. Then when we pass the list to the add transaction function, we're going to pass it the list and the number of items in the list. At this point, it's still 0. Then we're going to add more information to it. We're going to put the item number, and we're going to put the number of gallons. Then we're going to set the price. Okay? Set the price function is going to calculate, because we have these other fields, it's going to calculate the price. But in order to calculate the price, it needs to make sure that it has a valid number. So this is where we're going to use our valid number. Our set the price function has a return value. It's going to return a 1 if the number is valid, and it's going to return a 0 if the item number is not valid. Okay, so we're going to have to go through here for each and every one of these, because they all have different prices. So if the item number is 1, then the price per gallon will be $2.35, and the gas type will be regular. You guys understand that? I hope so. Then we got to do it for 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we got to add 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if it's 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think 5 is E85. I don't remember the price. Kind of stinks. So let's get the prices here. There they are. So I'm just going to copy and paste this really quick and then delete it, just so I have the prices here. All right, so I already got regular. Now we got mid-grade, so this one's going to be, number 2 is mid-grade, and it's $2.69. All right, got that one. Number 3 is going to be premium, and it's $2.99. Number 4 is going to be diesel, and the price is $2.60. And number 5 is E85, and the price is $2.09. If I'm wrong, it's okay. You just make sure you guys are right when you do it in your assignment. Now I also need to change this from if to else. I want to use cascaded because I want to be able to have a last else in case, in case they picked something that's not 1 through 5, right? All right. So let's logically take a look at this. This function returns an integer. So it's going to take the list and it's going to take the count because it needs to, assign these values to the certain gas purchase. And then it's going to go through. So if it's 1, it's going to assign that value. And if it's 2, etc., all the way up to 5. So if the user entered any number that's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's going to change the return value to 0 and tell the user that that is not recognized. So it's either going to return a 1, which the return value will not get changed to 0 if the user enters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the return value will be 1. If the user enters anything other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will change to 0. And it'll redo this and reset this each time this function is called. So now let's go back to our add function. Our add function is going to call that. So it needs to know if it's valid or not. So it's going to take that, is going to be the return, and the function is called set price. And this function takes the list and it takes the value at count pointer. If you notice, and I will go back to it in 1 second, that it does not, this is a pass by value, so you cannot, it's not an address. So this one is an address, but the set price function, this is not an address, so you need to go to the value at. So this is practice with that. And then what's going to happen is, when the set price function gets called, it takes the list and it takes the count. If it goes through and it discovers that it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, it's going to return a 0. This is going to have a 0, and this is going to get checked. This will not be true. So it's going to say you did not enter a valid item number and the transaction will not be added to the list. But if it is valid, you got to change the count. You got to add 1 to the count because now you need to move into the next location in the array. And the only other thing we need to do in this is we need to calculate. So to calculate the total, I think I gave it to you here, but I want to talk about it. You take the number of gallons that are already in the list at the right location. So when you start out, it's at 0. You take the price per gallon that was already set here in this function, and you multiply them, and then you calculate the total cost. So you can calculate the total cost. I suggest calculating the total cost if it's valid. So I would suggest calculating the total cost only if it's valid. There isn't any reason to calculate the total cost if it's not valid. So we're going to calculate the total. That function will take our list and it will take the value at count pointer. And now we should be adding to our list. Let's build it and make sure that it works. Okay, I have a couple of warnings. Those will be taken care of soon. All right, I want to add, enter the last name. I enter a 7. Please enter the number of gallons, 45. That was, you did not enter a valid number. It will not be added. There are still 0. Let's try to add now. Enter the last name. And enter 2, number of gallons. Okay, now there is 1 in the list. Perfect. So you do have to enter all the information before it checks that. And I did that on purpose. Just to make you practice and to make sure that you're following my directions. So if you guys do not, if you enter the number and then you don't have the user enter the name and the number of gallons, then you're not following my directions. My directions, I want you, again, this is not supposed to be a practical, always changes can be made to make it more practical. This is just practice writing code, practice trying things. So I would really like for you to follow my directions you get the last name, you get the item number, you get the number of gallons, and then you check to see if it's valid or not. All right, so that's working. So now we want to print the list onto the screen. So printing the list onto the screen is going to take the count and the list. And if the list is empty, it's going to say count is 0, the list is empty. And if it's not empty, of course, then I'm going to use a for loop. You can use a while loop if you want. So I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to go up to count. And I'm going to go one by one through the list and print them all onto the screen. So this, you want to print all of the fields. So you're going to print F. There are 6 of them, so I'm just going to print, I don't know, what do I have in the sample output? When you hit print, I added them. And when I print, okay. Customer last name. So when you print it, you don't have to print the number, you just have to print the last name, the type of gas, the number of gallons, the price, and the total. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste that into here. All right, so this is a printf. Bear with me for 1 second. Customer last name, %s. So how do I get to the customer last name? Well, I need to go to my list at the right index. So the index is going to be I, and then dot last name. And that is a character array, so that will be replaced where that S is. Then the next thing is going to be the gas type. Gas type is also a character array. So I'm going to go to my list at index I, dot gas type, and then I want to print the number of gallons. I want to print the price per gallon, and I want to print the total. All right, number of gallons. Number of gallons is an integer. Again, that's not very practical, but that's all right. List at index I, dot known gallons, and price per gallon. %.2f list at index I dot, oops, dot goes out, price per gallon, and then the last one is the total, and I'm going to leave the searching up to you guys to figure out how to do. But of course, if you want to email me, I'm very happy to help you if you're working on it. But I want you guys to see if you can do the searching. It's very important. I do believe that your bonus quiz question is very similar to the searching. So I would strongly encourage you to work on it. And it uses the same loop here. It's just that you need to search and find and compare and find where it is E85. So that's really kind of almost done for you. So let's see it now if it works. All right, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to select A. I'm going to put Smith. I'm going to pick 2. I'm going to pick 34. A. I'm going to put Jones. I'm going to pick 4. I'm going to pick 45. And now let's see if they print. And look at that. What happened? They don't print. And I know why. I never called the function. So let's, yeah, this is a little frustrating because it takes some time to interact and I did not call the print list function. So to call the print list function, that's going to be called when the user selects P. So I got to go all the way up here in my process selection function, print list. It takes two things. It takes the list and it takes the count. Now I have to check, is count here is a pointer. So it's going to take the value at count pointer. The reason why it's not going to take an address, because the print list doesn't need to change the number of items, so there isn't any reason to pass it as an input-output parameter. Try again. And A. Smith 234 A. Jones 4 1. Let's hope it prints. All right, so it printed. It printed everything I wanted it to print. It doesn't look very pretty, so I would probably space it out and make it look a little nicer. And then the only other thing you have left to implement is the S. But for sure, if you have any questions at all, please reach out. Remember to send a current version of your code, and I'm very happy to help you.